In this video, we're going to go over the best way to determine why a behavior problem occurs and why causation is better than correlation by doing an experimental functional analysis.
If you grind away every single day on that goal, how can you not accomplish it?
You're all familiar with reactivity, right? So if I show up in the school and maybe I'm the only male clinician and I'm a novel because they haven't seen me yet. If I show up, the kid acts different, especially if I show up with a camera on. And if I show up and I start influencing the situation, the learner acts different. But then when they go home, they go back to their old ways. So you can skip over two big challenges are the generalization to the home, because you're coaching the parent with the Bluetooth in their ear while they're home, and you can skip over the reactivity of the presence of the BCBA hovering over, standing there saying, ignore that, reward that, good job. And then generalization is embedded within the process. If you just observe the ABCs, the antecedent, behavior, and consequence, it's correlational. All it means is that, okay, 80% of the time, the antecedent is that it's preceded by a demand, like the child was asked to write their name. 90% of the time, they escaped the demand. So therefore, we assume, we have an inference that it's for escape as a function. But that doesn't mean it is. That's just correlational. The best way to really determine if a behavior is really maintained by escape is setting up a situation where you manipulate the variables. And if John's the student, I'm going to say, John, pick up the water bottle. So if I'm doing an analog experimental analysis, this is something that most people don't have experience in. Most BCBAs don't do this, but it's the most valid way to determine if it really is happening. So if I place a demand and I say, pick up the water, and he hits his head. Okay, you don't have to do it. Take a break, take a break. This is what a parent might do, because they don't want to see their child hit themselves in the head. So pick up the water bottle. He hits his head. I'm like, oh, okay, you don't have to do it. I just reinforced it and said no demand, and then he stopped. So I wouldn't use it with self-injury, because that could be a real problem, because you're increasing it. So the idea of the analog assessment analysis is actually reinforcing the problem behavior to see what's controlling it. So are you familiar with what you would do in the attention condition? So if I think that John is a student and he's doing something to get my attention, and let's pretend it's head hitting, I probably wouldn't do it for this, but it's just the easiest one to do right now. So I would ignore John, and I'd probably start reading a magazine. And if John starts hitting his head, I would say, oh, John, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not good. And he likes the reprimand, then I come over here and I'll start reading a magazine. John hits himself. Oh, John, don't do that. Stop. So if John keeps doing that, it means he liked my reaction and he kept doing it. So it increases rates of self-injury. Again, I wouldn't use self-injury because that could be harmful if it's some other behavior like screaming or something like that. So does anyone know what you would do for the tangible condition? If I know that John likes his phone, and that's the tangible item, I would take the phone and I'd say, my turn, and then John starts hitting his head. Oh, sorry, here you go, here it is. Like a bad teacher, or a bad parent, or an inappropriately trained parent, should I say. So John's happy now, he's using his phone. This is the tangible condition. I would take it and say, my turn. Oh, here, don't hit yourself, give it back. So that's experimental control. Now, that's the most valid way of conducting a functional analysis. It's the most valid way of determining why a behavior occurs. For attention, escape, tangible. Does anyone know how you would identify automatic reinforcement or internal? What would you do?
Put them in a room alone and see if the behavior.
Yeah, you're good. Can I hire you? So you basically, if you're trying to figure out if a learner does something because it feels good and it has nothing to do with the environment, then you're just watching them alone. And I'm watching John behind probably a one-way mirror or a camera, and he doesn't know I'm watching. It's because if he knows I'm watching, then it affects the situation. But if I'm just watching John and he's head hitting, and he would do it endlessly without me intervening, then he's doing it because it feels good. Therefore, that's the fourth function, the sensory or automatic. Make sense? I bring this up because you can actually train the parent, which is very hard, or the caregiver to be me, the therapist that's rewarding, extinguishing, and then it teaches the parent or the teacher that they have functional control. They're like, wow, I actually set off the behavior, reinforced it, and then I actually did a treatment. So for any one of those treatments, I would probably strengthen an alternative behavior. So if it were that example, like with a water bottle, and I place a demand on, if I were the therapist and if John was nonverbal, I might encourage him to sign break. So I might say, pick up the water, and now before he hits his head, I'll be like, don't forget, sign break. Oh, good job, you don't have to do anything, take a break. So I just replaced it with this instead of this. So right away, we're replacing with functionally equivalent behavior. So when it comes to attention, it would be something similar. So what's really cool is by using remote video training and a Bluetooth in the ear, you can really train a parent or a teacher to control behavior. If you're on the other end and you're coaching, what's most powerful about it is that they realize that they control. A kid that's in a chair and they're asked to do work, I see this all the time. Do your work. The kid starts to do their work, and then they flop to the ground and laugh and start rolling around on the ground, and the teacher's struggling, trying to get the learner back in the seat. There's two functions happening there. What are they? Attention because of that, and escape because they were asked to do something. So the reinforcer has to be flipped around. Like, if we try to just teach him to ask for attention, that's not going to be enough. And if we just ask him to sign for break, that's not enough either. He's going to need a certain type of attention, which is actually goofy tactile attention, because he's liking the idea, he's on the ground and he's being prompted physically up. So what he might need is an intervention that matches the function and has the same value. So in other words, the teacher just can't say, oh, good job, ask for a break, good job. That's not going to do it, because that does not compete with rolling around on the ground and getting a reaction, right? The intervention has to match it with the same magnitude, so the learner is going to have to have a situation where they earn access to go like on a special area on a mat and high fives and tickles, because that competes with the inappropriate behavior. Does that make sense? Because too often we find out the function, but it doesn't serve the same value. It doesn't have the same, some kids love a negative reaction, but if you think that you created an intervention by saying great job, that's not going to have the same value as a reprimand and getting a reaction from the teacher is going to have to provide something of the same value.